American McGee's Alice Madness Returns was released in 2011. It's a direct sequel to American McGee's Alice, with Madness Returns being developed by Spicy Horse and published by EA, but the first game was developed by Rogue Entertainment with the same publisher EA, although EA doesn't sell the first game anymore, so let me get that with piracy. But this game's still available through PC and Steam port that also got delisted like a few years ago, but that's besides the point. EA and their problems is beside the point. You should be seeing footage for the game's original 2 teasers, which I wanted to show because they honestly had jack all to do with the game itself. Although there is a beta version of sorts trailer that does show different ideas this game is going to have, but I'll show that off later. The main premise is that Alice Liddell is still haunted by the fire that killed her family many years ago. Despite seeing a psychiatrist to help her with this, the doctor doesn't seem to be making any results, trying to get her to forget what happened with her trauma, but all that's going on is that the Wonderland in her mind is now coming down with new problems that she has no idea what's going on, and since people in Wonderland are created from her mind, it is a little funny they kind of go, I don't know, it's your mind, I don't know what you're asking me. At times, or realizing that even if she doesn't solve the problem, they could still technically exist at some point or subconscious. On top of having to deal with Wonderland looking completely different than anything she's done about before, there is also brief bits we do play as Alice in the real world, but you don't really do a whole lot in it. But with the fact that if you pay attention to the stuff in the environment, you can see little bits and pieces influencing the stuff you'll see in Wonderland, and I do really love that kind of environmental detail. I also love the fact that you can overhear people's conversations, and there are points where they'll actually talk about what Alice was doing while she was in her mind in Wonderland, and what her physical self was doing. So at that little detail, they could just eavesdrop on the NPCs to find out what was going on while Alice was trying to fix the stuff in her mind. The beta trailer that was released actually shows there was initially more stuff planned for the real world segments, like a whole different plot line involving being framed for murder potentially, or maybe she did do it, and having to evade the police, but that's mostly now what ifs, what's going to happen, because that's not going to be in the game. The real world stuff doesn't play a whole lot of what you're doing, and there will be stuff that disappointingly just doesn't really have a resolution, and could have had a resolution in the next game that I'll talk about later, but some things will feel like they were dropped for one reason or another. So the main focus is the stuff going on within Wonderland, why it's changed, and what is going on with this whole entire train that Alice keeps seeing in Wonderland, and what actually happened with her family's death. Overall, I really like the narrative. I love how you're observant enough. Small little details you probably would have just not paid attention to could actually end up being a little crumb to something way bigger. Also the fact that within the real world, there are objects you can observe just to get Alice's thoughts and what she thinks of certain things. I love it when games do that, just give you a little glimpse of the characters currently thinking about these objects within the environment, which is freaking cool. So the environmental detail within Wonderland is amazing, and while I do like the interaction with characters in Wonderland, there are some characters that I'm like, okay, I think I've seen you for too much, could get the game could continue onward, but that's more of a gameplay gripe. Speaking of which, is also the fact of you can find memory fragments within Wonderland that once again help you put together what's going on with this whole entire mystery, like what's going on, what actually happened to Alice's family with the fire and everything. And I love the fact that if you're observant, put the piece together, you can figure it out before Alice herself does, which is a freaking cool thing to do with the narrative, and I love that. And despite being a direct sequel, because Wonderland's in complete disarray, you're basically within the same position as Alice, not even knowing what you're looking at or what's going on, as she's trying to ask the creatures of Wonderland, what's happening, why is there a train, what's all this, can someone explain something? Oh, like I said, a lot of characters just like pointing out, I don't know, it's your mind, you tell me. I also love the fact that the abilities and items you get will at points be associated with a memory Alice had. I just love that combination, having, hey, here's a new tool, and here's why in her mind this tool is an ability she can use in Wonderland to her benefit. I love that aspect coming together. It's a freaking cool way of not only giving you more bits of Alice's life, but also combining it with the gameplay. Now for the gameplay, with the main game being an action platformer, with you generally platforming a lot, with the ability to even do stuff like multiple jumps, I think up to 3, and you can glide. I love the fact you can glide in between each jump to keep your airtime and extend it, and as a last-ditch effort, you can then go into a dodge, which will also immediately shoot you in a direction, so it really helps with platforming, especially for some last-second saves when you're trying to do stuff. There are many stuff for platforming, like stuff like hidden pathways, which you can use a shrink ability in order to reveal, or these gusts of air that can use to float higher. And I love the fact that as you turn the camera while in this air gust, it will also change Alice's direction automatically. You don't need to then move your left stick and then try and redirect her manually. Where the camera's pointing is where she will go, and I love that aspect they put into the controls, so that way there's no awkwardness where you may have the camera facing one direction, but Alice is facing another and may end up shooting into the wrong direction. I love that. As for the combat, you'll initially start out with the Vorpal blade, but get more stuff to toy around with, whether it be the toy hammer or the pepper grinder, and more stuff out there to fight enemies with. And the combat is pretty simple, but just enjoyable, and honestly, when you're in the middle of combat, that's honestly for me when the game looks the best, because of the effects on the weaponry and the stuff you're doing, especially for the PC version, which has PhysX to work with, so stuff can even look even better than compared to the console version the PS3 360 had before. It is freaking cool. I especially love the visual effect of the Vorpal blade when you use it. Also the fact that you can upgrade weapons, and when they're upgraded, their visual design will change along with the upgrades, which is a freaking cool addition. They didn't do that, but they did, and that's freaking awesome. The weapons look more and more different with each time you upgrade it. When it comes to combat, there are some enemies that I don't like. There's one enemy that requires you to bounce back and attack to them before they open them up, and generally I think the weakest enemies in the game are the ones that require the player to have to wait to do something. And there are some enemies that do that. They either just have a vulnerability state, or they require you to counter them, and I don't like that because there are points where they'll be mixed in with a bunch of other enemies, and if you have several enemies that require you to counter to hit them, it can just be frustrating that you're basically left trying to wait to do something, but it could be something else that can interrupt you as you finally have a moment to do something. And honestly, I just don't like enemies that require you to wait so long before you can attack them. Although the ones that fly in the air, those are fine to shoot the pepper grinder. Those are fine because you can honestly also shoot them over a pit and those will immediately fall to their deaths. But just ones like these crab enemies to parry and also open up with the hammer, it's like we're doing a bit too much here, especially if other enemies are going to be in the mix. There are these enemies later, like little samurai wasps. Those I like because you can open them up with the hammer and try blocking, but if they're not blocking, you just use a Vorpal blade and just go in on them. I prefer those for their ability to open them up for yourself and get more in their face as opposed to having to back off and wait for an opening. But it's just some enemies, when they do that, can have just some relentless assaults. One tool this game loves using is a little remote bomb you can use, and that's mostly used for puzzles or initially opening up broken walls. And I love the detail that there's an animation where Alice will gently place it on a button, but the main animation is her casually throwing it over her shoulder to use for combat. And I love that fact because, I'll be real, I can think of one other game that was way bigger than this that made the mistake only having the one animation where you put a bomb down gently and not the other one for actual combat. So I appreciate the fact developers thought about that and went, okay, when it's a continuation of the button, it's a more calmer, slower, gentle put down. When it's more frantic, she'll throw it over her shoulder, so it's easier to use as a weapon as well. Although strangely, you can't upgrade this one, but it is used a lot for puzzles because of the fact that we put it down a button, you then have basically on a timer to try and get to your next destination before the thing blows up, and the game will use it a lot, generally in ways I'll try to figure out how to pretty much get to the location, whether it be obstacles in your way, or even one segment that I like where there'll be these platforms to put a bomb in order to increase one platform, but you gotta race the other one before it's too high for you to jump on, and stuff like that to make you think outside the box when it comes to trying to get these platforming challenges under a time limit. There are also little minigame stuff that, okay, granted, this is specifically me, but I don't care for the block puzzles, but that's specifically me who has a hatred of block puzzles that I do poorly on them. With, in this game's case, I would do terribly on the first try, and then somehow immediately get on the second try with like minimal movements. There's no in-between with me, I don't know. There is one that I feel like has to be a bug with the PC version, because it's a rhythm game based little mini game, but it, for some reason, the frame rate for it is so awful. Ironically, it makes it easier to do because you just spam the button in case you missed it, but these segments just, there's something just wrong with them, bugged on the PC version that sadly is that case and nothing you can do with it. Hell, even opening the menu while playing the game also just has it go very slowly. The actual gameplay itself doesn't do that, but for some reason these menus while playing will have these bugs. There are also other bugs I had where this game will just crash randomly. Had to happen like 3 times. And when you initially boot it up, there are times when it will just load forever and it's basically just stop responding. It's a demanding close it the task manager. So there's stuff like that. And there's one that I think is tied to SSD, because I know for a fact I did not have this one years ago, where sometimes the cutscene will end, the actual animation will end, but the dialogue is still going, and the game will just darken the screen until the dialogue has finished. I think that might be because the SSD is loading the game faster than it was intended, so the game has to pretty much stay in one position, its bugged position, as the audio then has to catch up to the actual animation. So for that might be SSD issues. When I first played it, I did not have an SSD in my computer. Something cool is the fact that when you start a chapter, you'll generally be in Alice's default outfit, but when it progresses to a certain point, it'll then be a unique outfit for that locale they can then unlock to play with in New Game Plus, and that is freaking cool. It shows that this game is from a different era, because if that would happen nowadays, it probably wouldn't be a thing, it would be solely DLC. Granted, this game did get DLC outfits, and they look freaking cool, but on the PC version, they never put them up for sale. They're in the game's files, so you can mod them in to have them, but you can't purchase them from the Steam store at all. They're only made purchasable on the console version, sadly. My biggest gripe with the gameplay is that it can feel like some levels may feel like they go on for a bit too long. Not all of them, specifically I have to say the level that takes place underwater, because that was the case where it's like you're given 3 tasks to do, but then those tasks generally require 3 tasks to do, and even though you're not actually there for a long time, even like 2 hours, not all that bad, it just feels more dragged out because of the fact that you're repeating the same repetitive task multiple times, even if in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that long. This game's not that long at all, but it can just feel like sometimes a level is outstaying its welcome. Although there is one chapter in the game that is solely just the finale, so it being a separate chapter is a bit weird, but hey, it makes me playing the finale a lot easier, so I'm cool with that. Overall, I really like this game when I played it years ago, and I still do greatly enjoy it and everything it brought to the table. I love the storytelling through the environment and the story being told through it, even if there are certain characters in the real world that feel like just kind of get dropped, but the main story of what's being told does not. It is freaking awesome. I also enjoyed the gameplay, even if I said there are certain enemy types that I could do without. I wish I had to put so much weighting on some of them, but the fact that each locale has unique enemies in them is also pretty damn cool that they went to that effort to make each locale have the enemies be unique to that area. So love that detail as well. So there's that, and the platforming, is just damn fun, especially with how cool the environments are to even look at and go through, and the shrink ability that allows you to just find little secrets and stuff. I also love the fact that because it's a shrink ability, there are times you do use it to duck under things, so it's not solely just a, oh, where do I go button kind of thing. It's also used for puzzles in itself, which is freaking cool. There are also these bonus side areas you can get, or try to get more health, or you can try to do a challenge. So the challenges can differ. Sometimes it's playing one of the mini games, sometimes it's kill the enemies, and sometimes it's just survive, with survival ones being the easiest, you can just spam a dodge and get away from them. So kind of like a with that one, but the rest are pretty cool. There's also one that just asks you questions to solve and everything. But I've seen, we did get one question right, not even all of them. So there is that cool aspect of trying to diversify the bonuses in order for you to get the red paint to unlock more health. And which game is generous with, because you have plenty of health. Just for the mention, there's also a Hysteria mode you can go into when you're near death, which is essentially your last resort mode, which will buff your damage and have this cool visual effect, but also make enemies drop way more health than normal and everything, which is a cool way of doing a super mode. The fact that it's a last ditch effort rather than a meter you fill and pop it when you feel confident, this is on the back foot, and that is super cool, making you aggressive while you're on the back foot instead of trying to panic and back away. That is a cool way of doing a powered up state, and I love that fact. Now, I mentioned before about a next game. That has to do with the fact that American McGee for several years was trying to work on a new Alice title called Alice Asylum that went through many reworks, but after many years got an entire design document made, which I'll link in the description for you to see yourself, of what this hypothetical game could have been like everything. It was pretty much the dream project that people wanted, according to fans, to try and get a third game done. So some of the questions I have left over from this game could have been answered in Alice Asylum, but unfortunately EA was not interested in licensing the Alice IP and was not interested in selling the Alice IP, pretty much killing any hope for the project being done. I would say killing any hope for now, because at some point some person can take over and change their mind, but as of right now, the only thing you have is a crowdfunded series of shorts for Alice Madness Returns that take place after the game, which you can find on American McGee's YouTube channel as well. So there is that if you like more of Alice, and you want to play the first game, pirate it. There's no other option. There's no other option. I think it might be available on Xbox with compatibility, so be able to play on Xbox One or Series console. But aside from that, piracy. There's no option in order to play the original Alice that came out in 2000. So there is that, but as said, while the hopes for now for a third game may not be there, there could be hopes down the road eventually, because I believe that the chance of something happening are never fully zero. If the spark is there, if the fans are there, there could be someone who can change their mind. Even if someone at EA now says no, someone later down the road who takes over could say yes. But I believe I heard that ever since that whole entire rejection, American McGee seems to have, some people said, left the game industry. I don't think fully. I think just shifted to different projects, considering he wanted to be known as more than just the Alice person. And I'm not helping that case. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, American McGee. Anywho, that's all I gotta say. Like I said, design document for Alice Asylum will be available in the description. Also, links to the shorts as well, even though they're for after being in the game. But hey, it's cool to have the links there rather than somewhere else. You know, some people may not even know about it, like I didn't. That's like I said, Alice Madness Returns. It is a cool game. I will say it can feel tedious at points with the combat. Some enemies require you to be slower paced and needed to wait for them to make the move, but it is just a fun game. The story that's going forward is freaking great as well. I love the little details they make to support it. These are some development details for this game that are kind of like an interesting tidbit, but also kind of a, you know what, that is right. Why would someone ask that question kind of thing? So this game is freaking dope. I wish more people talked about it. I remember when it came out, not many people talked about it, but there's always chance for a revival someday down the road. Maybe, who knows, because the chances are never fully zero. So I gotta say, good day. One more thing, I'm also linking the rap review by Infamous TV / Broken Pixels, because that rap review is also a bop. So I'm putting that in the description too. Okay, now good day for real.